All right, everyone. Week 2 is in the books as far as the full slate of Sunday games go. Monday Night Football is about a half hour to 40 minutes away before kickoff, so let's take a look at how I did for Week 2. So, first we're going to start off with the Giants and the Bears. Bears win 17-13. They get the pennant for winning the game. I get the red X for guessing this incorrectly. And honestly, who could have foresaw the season-ending injury to Saquon Barkley, who tears his ACL and is out for the year? It sucks. It really does. Giants fans, I feel bad for you. He's pretty much the bright spot on this team, other than, flashes of brilliance from Daniel Jones here and there and Darius Slayton. And your superstar is gone. You don't have him anymore, at least for this year. So, where do you go from here? The Giants, I feel like, are probably going to still win some games, but they're going to be near the bottom of the pile for the rest of the season as they try to figure out whether it's going to be Devontae Freeman, Dion Lewis, Wayne Gallman, who take over for the lion's share of the carries in this backfield, but the backfield now stinks for real life and fantasy football purposes. Mitchell Trubisky comes out of nowhere with another win. Somehow he's doing it, but he had a very Trubisky-like stat line with 190 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Daniel Jones doesn't fare much better. 241 yards, no scores, 1 interception. Bright spot of the day, David Montgomery, 16 carries, 82 yards, 3 catches, 45 yards, and a score. He looks well removed from that injury that scared everyone in training camp. So the Bears moved 2-0, who would have guessed, and the Giants are now going to be struggling to find out what's next. Moving on to the Falcons and the Cowboys. This is a very Falcons performance, and it's just been a train wreck ever since that Super Bowl loss to the Patriots. Cowboys win 40-39 in a glorious comeback by Dak Prescott. I get the green check for accurately picking this. Cowboys get the banner for the win. Everybody went off. Ryan, 273 yards, 4 scores. Ridley, 7 catches, 109 yards, 2 scores. He feels like he's having that Juju Smith-Schuster breakout season where there is a clear-cut number 1 on this team, the comparison being Antonio Brown and Julio Jones. So this is definitely his coming out party, if you will. Dak Prescott throws 450 and a touchdown. Elliott gets 22 carries for 89 yards and a score. CeeDee Lamb, welcome to the NFL, with 6 catches and 106 yards. Dan Quinn, you are this close to getting fired. It's just the reality of the situation. You look at the quotes after big-time losses for the last couple of years, acting like you're upset and mad and furious and frustrated and using that as motivation to go out and change things and win the next game. This defense sucks. Matt Ryan would probably be winning tons of more games and more playoff appearances on a different team. I just don't know where they go from here. Something has to be done differently because this defense is just atrocious. And the Cowboys, a nice bounce back for them, even though they let go that lead very quickly. So it looked like things might be a disaster after a Week 1 loss to the Rams and then surrendering such a big lead early in this game. And but thankfully their roster actually turned out to produce for this game, and Dak Prescott showed off why he's going to be the next highest paid quarterback in this league. Moving on to the Lions and Packers. Packers win 42-21. I get the green check mark for correctly predicting this. Packers get the banner for the win. Matt Patricia gets another loss added to his resume. Aaron Rodgers has another good game, 240 yards, 2 touchdowns. Aaron Jones, it was pretty much the Aaron Jones show for the entirety of the afternoon. 18 carries, 168 yards, 2 scores, also had 4 catches, 68 yards, and a touchdown. So Aaron Rodgers continues to lead this Packer team to greater things. Back-to-back weeks scoring more than 40 points. They're up to 85 on the year after 2 games. That is absurd. I don't think this trend is going to continue, and they'll probably fall back down to earth sooner than later. Their first 2 games are against a hopeless-looking Vikings team and a Lions team that underachieves to the point where I think Matt Patricia is also on the chopping block. As far as the Lions go, I just wanted to make notes. DeAndre Swift, 5 catches, 60 yards, and that's significant because he caught all 5 of the passes thrown his way. Just thought I'd point that out. It's all fun and games. Moving on to the Jaguars and the Titans. Jaguars lose 30-33. Titans get the banner for the win. I get the green check mark for accurately predicting this one. Jaguars give the Titans a run for their money is what I would type up if I was writing a headline to describe this game. Minshew has an interesting game, 339 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. James Robinson, the undrafted free agent, showcases that he probably belongs in this league, 16 carries, 102 yards, and a score. Ryan Tannehill has a big game, 239 yards, 4 touchdowns. The Jaguars are going to be a fun team this year, and I think that the evidence is in the first two games because Jay Gruden is an absolutely really good play caller. I love how they're using Laviska Shenault. James Robinson is able to carry this load, so they're not going to be worried about bringing in a Devontae Freeman, Leonard Fournette, who at this point. DJ Chark is good. The rest of the receivers probably need to step up, and they probably need more production out of the tight end position. But overall, despite having what I thought going into the season was one of the more incomplete rosters in the league, they're here to fight, and they're going to go down swinging, whether or not they make it to the playoffs. I mean, how cool would that be to the Jaguars to sneak in as the final seed, and we have Minshew Mania at least for an extra game this year. As far as the Titans go, this feels like a good challenge for them to sort of keep them on their toes heading into next week against Minnesota, where I expect them to completely wreck house against a defense that is just absurdly bad. Derrick Henry continues to be a really good running back. I read a comment from a couple Titans fans that he appears sluggish. I haven't gotten to watch too much Titans football so far this year, so I'll have to rely on the Titans fans' comments for that one. All right, moving on to a game that I've already talked about yesterday, the Vikings and the Colts. Nothing really exceptional about this one other than that the Vikings are complete dog shit right now. We just lost Anthony Barr to a season-ending torn pectoral muscle. He is on injured reserve, and I don't see how this gets any better anytime soon. Now, it did take 4 or 5 weeks last year for Kirk Cousins to finally get into his groove and start actually playing football, but this year seems more hopeless as all the offseason transactions, draft choices, and contract extensions are now coming into question whether or not that those were the right things to do, because they pretty much lied to themselves thinking that they could do a soft rebuild and still compete for a Super Bowl, but it looks like they would have been better off just ripping down the house at the frame and starting over and building for a 2021 run. So now they may have unintentionally set themselves a number of years back. The stat sheet isn't that great. Jonathan Taylor gets 101 yards and a touchdown. Mo Alley Cox goes five catches for 111 yards. Welcome to the NFL. And Kirk Cousins is an abysmal day where he has 113 passing yards, no scores, and 3 interceptions. Yes, the one interception was on a Hail Mary, but it still goes on the stat sheet. At one point, he had a quarterback rating of 0.0, and if it wasn't for the final drive, he would have had an even worse quarterback rating. I think he ended somewhere like 14, 15.7 or something. But either way, absolutely terrible. Forcing throws to Adam Thielen for the majority of the game. There was a lot of drop passes in this game too. It's not 100% his fault. Irv Smith had a drop. I think Kyle Rudolph had a drop. The only one that didn't have a drop was Justin Jefferson, the first-round pick out of LSU. He catches all 3 of his targets for a pedestrian 44 yards. So the Vikings are on life support, and the Colts get a much-needed win after starting slow out of the gate in Week 1. Moving on to the Bills and the Dolphins, Josh Allen had himself a day in a victory with 31-28 over the Dolphins. Bills get the banner. I get the green check mark for picking this one correctly. Allen goes 417 yards, 4 touchdowns. Stephon Diggs, welcome to Buffalo, 8 catches, 153 yards, and a touchdown. Stephon Diggs now has more total receiving yards over the first 2 weeks of the season than the entire Vikings offense has produced combined. The Vikings only had 175 yards of total offense yesterday. That's bad. So I guess he was right. His whole reason of wanting to get out of Minnesota because he didn't like the direction of the offense. So far he wins that trade. Ryan Fitzpatrick does enough to fend off the Tua Tagovailoa rumors, or well, not rumors, but calls for him to start anyway. 328 yards, 2 scores. Mike Gesicki has a game to remember. 8 catches, 130 yards, 1 touchdown. The Dolphins, kept themselves in this, and it was interesting to see how they were able to actually sort of fight their way back against this really good defense. So Ryan Fitzpatrick still has those one-off gems under his belt where he can come out swinging and actually pull off a good game. But I think we're just, he's just delaying the inevitable for Tua Tagovailoa to take over, and I honestly can't wait for that day to happen. Nothing against Fitzpatrick. I'm just way more interested in seeing Tua at the next level. Moving on to the 49ers and Jets game. This feels like the most consequential game of the day. 49ers win 31-13. I get the green check mark for picking this one right. They get the banner for winning the game. I'm not even going to go over the stat sheet just because this is one of those instances where the Thanos meme of what did it cost you, everything, comes to life. This is that being personified. The 49ers have officially lost Nick Bosa for the year with an ACL tear as of about 4 minutes before I hit record on this. Jimmy Garoppolo was hurt. Solomon Thomas was hurt. Raheem Mostert were hurt. I think he's going to miss a week at least. And as far as that goes, that puts them in a critical spot where they are in a position where they are just not healthy at all. You've already lost Richard Sherman to IR for a little while. Deebo Samuel's been banged up. Jalen Hurd is out for the year. There's just too many pieces going missing. Now, I'm not too worried about Jimmy Garoppolo because Kyle Shanahan really likes Nick Mullins, and when Nick Mullins has played, he has played very well. I think the two are more interchangeable than people might like to admit, but that is the situation for quarterback. For the rest of the offense and the defense, it's going to have to be next man up at this point. I still think Kyle Shanahan is a good enough coach, and he has enough pieces in place with the system to make it work. Playoffs are maybe unlikely at this point because the rest of the division is really good, and which we're going to get to here in a minute. As far as the Jets go, Frank Gore is a nice story. He continues to play in the NFL. Adam Gase is just days away from getting fired, in my opinion. I mean, you have your best pass catcher is regulated to 1 reception and just blocks for the entire game. I mean, give me a break. The Adam Gase is a joke. The Jets suck. And this team deserves better. Sam Darnold deserves better, and the fans deserve better. Get him out of New York. Moving on, after all that, to the Rams and the Eagles. Rams win 37-19. They get the banner for winning the game. I get the red X because this was one of my upset picks that didn't come to fruition. And my line of thinking was that they got Lane Johnson and Miles Sanders back, and that would give them the edge. Turns out, didn't matter. The Rams look like they have returned to their Super Bowl ways, at least on offense, that year that they ran. I think it was 2018, if memory serves me correctly. The offense just looked good. Jared Goff gets 267 yards, 3 touchdowns. Tyler Higbee is the recipient of all 3 of those touchdowns. Miles Sanders did have a good game, 20 carries, 95 yards, and a touchdown, but Carson Wentz is just not playing good football right now. And it was actually funny because a reporter asked Doug Peterson in the post-game presser, why is Carson Wentz regressing this season? And his answer was, that's a good question, I don't know. So that's either, a red flag or just something to be monitored at this point, because remember, this team did draft Jalen Hurd. Not that I think that there's going to be calls for Jalen Hurts to be the starter anytime soon, but if things keep up in Philadelphia, I mean, we saw it yesterday with the piped-in fake crowd noise that was booing on the home team. So it's just one of those things in Philly that's, Carson Wentz wasn't the guy that won them the Super Bowl. That was Nick Foles. So maybe their ties to him isn't as critical as it may be in another fan base. Either way, Rams look very good. Robert Woods looks very good. Henderson had a game. Henderson was able to play and had a good game. Cam Akers ended up getting injured. I don't know if he returned or not. But I think that this offense under Sean McVay is back to their old ways. They run a lot of pre-snap motion, very creative. This team could be deep run playoff bound, if you will. Moving on to the Broncos and Steelers. This was a pretty fun game. After Drew Lock got injured, which is not good. It's not to say that that's a good thing. There was significant injuries in this game as well, that being Drew Lock and Cortland Sutton. But Drew Lock did not return, and Jeff Driscoll took over, and he tried to pull off his, or channel his inner Ryan Fitzpatrick, and almost became a legend, but fell short against the Steelers team that is really good and probably headed for the AFC title game. Jeff Driscoll gets 256 yards, 2 scores, and an interception. Big Ben has a good game, 311 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. James Conner makes a fool out of everybody that either left him on the bench to rot or traded him away. 16 carries, 106 yards, and a touchdown in fantasy football, that is. Deontay Johnson is proving to be one of those next up projects for the Pittsburgh Steelers because they just cannot miss when they draft wide receivers. Claypool looks legit. Deontay Johnson looks legit. Smith-Schuster is a proven commodity. James Washington has a role. He's just buried on the depth chart. There's just too many mouths to feed in this offense. But Johnson gets 8 catches, 92 yards, and a touchdown. He looks fantastic. On the Broncos side, Melvin Gordon had a good game, and that's about it. They did the best that they could with the materials that they had, but I think the Broncos are in for better days. They just need to evaluate Drew Lock. I don't know how much time he's scheduled to miss at this point, but it didn't look good. His arm was in a sling after the game. Panthers and Bucks. This was another one of my upset picks that did not come to fruition. Panthers lose 17-31. Bucks get the pennant for the win. I get the red X for picking this incorrectly. Christian McCaffrey was injured in this game. It looks like he's going to miss 4 to 6 weeks according to the team. Bridgewater aired it out once again, 367 yards, but no touchdowns with 2 interceptions. DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson both had 100-yard games. Tom Brady has a pretty pedestrian day, 217 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. Leonard Fournette surprisingly leaps over Ronald Jones in this game with 12 carries, 103 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Mike Evans looks returned from that hamstring injury that bugged him in week 1 to 7 catches, 104 yards, and a touchdown. The defense is better than I expected. Well, not better than I expected. I had said in the team preview that I think it was going to be better than most people thought, and the star so far has been Antoine Winfield Jr., and it's surprising that he lasted that far in the draft. The dude is just a ball hawk, and I can't wait to see him play more games, so maybe next week I'll probably tune into the Bucks. Moving on to the next game, the Cardinals and the Washington football team. The Cardinals were my pick in the Survivor League, and I have moved on to the next week with that correct selection. They get the banner for the 30-15 win. I get the green check mark for picking this game correctly. Haskins has a decent day, pretty pedestrian, 223 yards and a touchdown by his standards. Terry McLaurin goes off, 7 catches, 125, and a touchdown. Kyler Murray is just a different athlete. I think that there is a legitimate argument to be made that he should be considered for the most valuable player award. Now, we're going to get to more of that in a minute on who I think is probably going to win it, but at the same time, he's in that Lamar Jackson category where he's just a different breed of quarterback. And I mean, it's kind of surprising, or when you think back to how right before the draft, people were thinking that this guy should be playing baseball, and he could be a shortstop for like Pawtucket right now, just absolutely off the radar. But he's made his presence known in these first 2 weeks, and yesterday was no different. 286 yards through the air, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, 8 carries, 67 yards, two touchdowns. When you watch the touchdown runs, the guy just has a different speed. Like, he just pops it into 5th gear, and he's gone. It's just really amazing to watch. I really enjoyed it. Other takeaway from this game is Isaiah Simmons looks lost in his first 2 weeks. I don't think they know what to do with him. And despite how much I hyped him up in the pre-draft process and the post-draft process, if you will, after he was picked, his transition is going to be a little difficult, as we've seen evidence of these first 2 weeks, because it's just a different speed that he's probably not used to. And so life so far right now is difficult for him, but the Cardinals are rolling along. Moving on, the last game on this board before I have to switch them, the Chiefs and the Chargers was one of the better games of the day, with the surprise debut start of Justin Herbert after Tyrod Taylor's pregame injury. Herbert does the best that he could probably do, looking pretty flashy at times, 311 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 boneheaded interception. Patrick Mahomes squeaks in with 302 yards and 2 touchdowns. This game went all the way to overtime, and surprisingly, on 4th and 1, they decided to punt to the Kansas City Chiefs, and that sealed the Chargers' fate. And the defending champs are now 2-0, but props to the rookie who was able to go toe-to-toe with Pat Mahomes. That just shows you the strength of the AFC West. And my takeaway from this game is the comments made by Anthony Lynn afterwards, is that Tyrod Taylor is still the starter, and Justin Herbert is a backup for a reason. If that isn't demoralizing to, a guy that is supposed to be your franchise quarterback who just went out there and hung with the defending Super Bowl champions, I don't know what is. Chargers fans, explain it to me. Justin Herbert should be your starter now. He looked good against the defending Super Bowl champions. I don't get it. Anthony Lynn, you are a mysterious man. All right, so I have 2 more games that we got to cover, so I got to change the boards. Let's try to do a cool transition. All right, we'll see if that worked or not. Probably did. All right, so the board is completely empty now, and the only 2 games that remain are the Ravens, Texans, Patriots, Seahawks. So beginning with the Ravens, Texans, a little slow to get going, and not the breakout game from this team that we saw in Week 1 against the Browns, but the Ravens still hold their own. They get the victory 33-16. They get the pennant for the win. I get the green check mark for accurately predicting this. Lamar Jackson has, not his best day, but still a very good productive day, I would say, overall, in terms of what he's capable of. 206 yards through the air, 1 touchdown, 16 carries, 54 yards. Watson does his best to carry this team from behind, but only manages 275 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. The scary moment of the day was Will Fuller getting 1 carry, being listed on the injury report as questionable, and then receiving no targets for the rest of the game. It was a matter of time before Will Fuller got hurt, and it feels like this is an inconvenient time because this Texans offense is really struggling. And it's not the fault of Deshaun Watson at all whatsoever. This man needs to be saved from this franchise. It's because Bill O'Brien is just not doing enough to give him what he needs to be able to generate wins for this team. Not the greatest, most exciting game. The Texans feel like a team that are stuck in neutral, and the Ravens are definitely a team that are going to put games away that they should. There's not going to be a sub-500 team, I think, that sneaks up on them, at least not yet. Moving on to the game of the week, the Sunday night game, with a fantastic finish, is the Patriots and Seahawks. Seahawks win 35-30. They get to pin it for the win. I get the green check mark for picking this one correctly. Newton has a big game, 397 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, 11 carries, 47 yards, 2 more scores. It is going to be very difficult to stop this offense with Cam Newton and the way that Josh McDaniels designs up these plays as if he's coaching Navy, because the formations are just so damn eerily similar. It's going to take a while for teams to figure it out. Russell Wilson continues his 2-game stretch of MVP, I guess I would say like MVP front runner gameplay. 288 yards, 5 touchdowns, and an interception that is not his fault. That is a pick 6 that goes on the stat sheet just because the NFL scores things stupidly, but it hits the hands of, I believe it was Greg Olsen was the intended target, and it's just an absolute gift to McCourty, I think it was McCourty that returned it. DK Metcalf has a good game, 4 catches, 92 yards, 1 touchdown. I always love pointing it out how Metcalf is definitely made for this league, and he just landed on the absolute correct team to take advantage of his skill set. Russell Wilson has another game where he looks really incredible. He's the best quarterback in the league right now, in my opinion. Aaron Rodgers is a close second after the first 2 weeks, and I think that there is a legitimate argument to be made that Russell Wilson is your MVP right now if the season were to end tomorrow. And if he keeps this up, I think he's going to run away with it because he has just been fantastic for the first 2 weeks. And the way that this game ended in dramatic fashion, as it normally does with the Seahawks and the Patriots going back to the Super Bowl, I don't criticize the play call right there. You could say everybody knew that it was going to be that play call. Cam Newton with the quarterback draw to get in the end zone to win the game. And yes, they had snuffed that play out on the 2-point conversion, and it didn't work. But at the same time, I think you go to your bread and butter. Now, the rest of the athletes or the rest of the surrounding cast for Cam Newton is not great. It's probably one of the weakest group of receivers that he's ever had outside of Julian Edelman, who just appears to not be willing to slow down. N'Keal Harry had a little bit of a better game today, but at the same time, he doesn't have like a Greg Olsen or a Rob Gronkowski or anything like that. I'm interested to see what becomes of this team after Damian Harris comes off IR, because other than Cam Newton, no running back on this team is really carrying their weight right now, and that's probably by design. So that's going to do it for the Week 2 Sunday recap. Monday Night Football will be starting here pretty soon, so enjoy that, and I'll see you in the next one.